Husband's been secretly planning to leave the country and start over with his mistress, and if I don't keep talking straight through this sentence, my courage will notice what my mouth is doing and stage an intervention. I'm Layla, I'm 32, and I'm an immigration paralegal, which you would think would make me immune to being blindsided by passports and plane tickets, yet here I am. The woman who color codes other people's visas while my own marriage had an exit stamp I didn't even get to see. It started because of a showbox. See, people think infidelity reveals itself with a lipstick stain or a dramatic text from someone who insists on using 3 hearts when one would do. No. It was a showbox in our laundry room, under the wobble-legged shelving where we keep the catastrophe towels. I only noticed it because the washing machine made that whale noise it does before it decides to be dramatic. I went to pull the machine forward, saw the edge of cardboard, and tugged. The lid slid back like a stage curtain, and there, resting on black tissue paper like a small miracle, was a brand new passport cover, navy blue leather, the kind that says, "Treat me gently, I'm about to do something important." Inside the cover was a passport that didn't belong to me. It was my husband's, of course. Noah, 34, high school biology teacher, collector of novelty socks and small kindnesses you think you could build a civilization out of. The passport wasn't the reveal. The ticket tucked inside was 2 tickets, actually. A pair of boarding passes printed on that thick paper that's trying to seem like an invitation. Sydney to Lisbon. 1 month from that day. His name was on one. The other just said passenger 2 TBD. TBD punched me more than any name could have. It meant we hadn't even earned the decency of being chosen over. I stood in the doorway holding a showbox like it had manners, and I heard my own voice say, "Okay," in the way I say it to clients when they hand me a stack of forms bound by a rubber band from 1999. I set the showbox on the dryer. I picked up my phone. And I did the only thing that ever keeps me from building elaborate narratives that turn me into a tragic heroine. I opened the Notes app and made 2 columns, facts and stories. Facts, new passport cover. Lisbon flight, 2 tickets. Date in 1 month. Noah's passport present. He has not mentioned Lisbon. He hates sardines. That last one I deleted because it wasn't helpful, but I needed to write something that sounded like us. Stories, his running. There's a woman. He thinks he can put an ocean between cause and consequence. I wrote those and then deleted them too because I know better. Feelings aren't fiction, but they aren't facts either, and if I let them drive, they will park me in a cul-de-sac of speculation until the streetlights come on. I put the showbox back. I cooked dinner like a person whose hands remember how to do ordinary even when her brain has stepped sideways out of the day. Carbonara, because stirring eggs into hot pasta until alchemy happens is one of the few rituals that still feels like a small miracle. He came home late, apologizing to the hallway, kissed the top of my head, and said something about a biology quiz that made even the cat roll her eyes. I watched him move around our kitchen, our very small kitchen, taking up exactly the amount of space he always has, and I felt a strange, clean rage. Not the bonfire kind. The stovetop kind, contained, useful, capable of producing dinner and decisions. The next morning, I tested a hypothesis. I sent him a link to a photo essay of Lisbon tiled staircases with a caption that said, "Holy moly, one day." He heart reacted and said, "Those tiles. Imagine the museums." It read like foreshadowing written by a nervous playwright. At lunch, I called the airline pretending to be a very organized wife, making sure we could choose seats together for our anniversary trip. I provided his frequent flyer number because wives sometimes know things that way. The agent was a voice made entirely of cardigan. "Yes, she said cheerfully. 1 adult ticket paid, 1 companion placeholder reserved, names pending." I thanked her and put my head on my desk and stared at the stapler like it owed me an apology. I could have confronted him. I'm not a coward, I'm a planner. When your day job is assembling other people's exits from places they never wanted to leave, you develop a respect for paperwork. And this, whatever this was, it had paperwork. I printed the itinerary. I pulled our bank statements like an auditor with a grudge. In the last 6 months? Cash withdrawals at odd times. Purchases at a boutique luggage store he has never let me walk into because it's dangerous in there. Charges from an app with a bland name but a logo that practically winks, Nomad something, a relocation concierge. There was also a small recurring charge from an online language school hidden among gym memberships and streaming services. Portuguese. My husband, who can barely remember irregular English verbs, was paying to learn how to apologize in another language. I showed none of this to anyone because I wanted my brain clear of other people's shock. I told exactly one person because I am not that brave. Maya, my best friend and moral paramedic, came over with a bag of mandarins and that face she does when she is about to say kindness like a scalpel. We laid everything out on the table, boarding passes, bank printouts, my notes. She peeled a mandarin so gently you'd think it was a bomb. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. "Agree? Argue? Bake a pie with a file in it?" "I want you to sit here while I find the rest of the truth," I said. "Because if I go to him now, I will end up in a debate about adjectives and I want verbs." She nodded. "Verbs are expensive," she said. "Make him pay with them." The next day I went to the antique store on Belmont because I had a feeling. They sell those leather passport covers. The owner is a woman named Sophie who has a permanent smudge of silver polish on her finger and a memory like a library. "Blue leather?" I asked. "Embossed with initials." "Came in last month," she said. "Cute guy, good hair, hands like he plays guitar or cooks with care. Wanted the embossing to be N and H and then changed his mind to just N. Waffled for a full song. Came back a week later and bought a small compass too, the decorative kind that points to optimism. Sophie is not unkind, she is lethal in that way that only accuracy can be. I went home and in a fit of fair play checked myself for lies. I had not been perfect. I had let our routine become a Jenga tower we both stopped playing. I had immersed myself in other people's lives because my own felt like a sentence that forgot its verb. I had assumed that love was a house that keeps itself clean. It isn't. It's a studio apartment with a high-maintenance sink and a neighbor who plays the recorder at 7 a.m. It needs work. I had not done enough. But I had not done this. The mistress revealed herself the way women reveal themselves when they are sure they are smarter than you, carefully and then all at once. Her name was on a booking confirmation for a rental in Lisbon, a PDF Noah saved in the wrong folder, like his guilt had gotten lazy. Isla, of course her name was Isla, like the promise of a private beach. I recognized it from the online language school family plan. Her last name was a sound that made poetry happen in your head. She was a travel photographer if you believed her bio, which featured sunsets doing their job. Her website was a festival of longing and landscapes, captions like "go" and "stay," and a photo of the back of a woman's neck that made me want to tell her to put on sunscreen. She had a feed full of cobblestones and tickets and coffees with foam like clouds. She did not seem cruel. Cruelty would have been easier to fight. When the proof felt like it could stand up in court, I plotted a confrontation grounded in daylight and chromosomes. Saturday morning, the kitchen, the place where the carbonara had once made everything simple, because I am sentimental but I enjoy staging. He came in wearing the sweatshirt that has a tiny embroidered whale on it, the one I bought him when we were still new, and he observed a stranger's dog vomiting on a subway platform like a naturalist. He kissed my cheek, reached for cereal, and a small sound came out of me that I did not know I could make. It wasn't a sob. It was a violin string being tuned too tight. "What's wrong?" he asked, immediate and sincere because he's still that guy. I slid the boarding passes across the counter. He stared. The color ran out of his face like a tide that realized it had agreed to a meeting it didn't have time for. He did not reach for a lie. He reached for the wall. "Okay," he said. "Okay." He's Saturday. He placed his palms on the table, and if our table had been a fainting couch it would have swooned dramatically. "I was going to tell you," he said, and I cut him off with a soft hand in the air. "I believe that," I said. "I believe you were going to tell me on the plane when it was too late to do anything but absorb. I believe you were going to turn the descent into a conversation and the cobblestones into a soft landing. I believe you rehearsed it in Portuguese because contrition sounds prettier in a language you don't know well enough to argue back." He winced. It was not satisfaction, it was geography. I took out my notes like a person who knows where the exits are. How long? I asked. 18 months, he said. We met on a teacher exchange forum. She did a talk about using travel to teach perspective. We started deeming. It felt contained. Then her work brought her here for a conference and we had coffee, and then you know how you sometimes step off a curb because you're looking at the sky and a bus reminds you you're mortal? I didn't look. It wasn't a bus. It was a month later in my kitchen and we were making pancakes and I realized I was narrating this to myself like a movie and I couldn't hear your voice in it. So I muted you. That's the worst thing I've ever said aloud. What's the plan? I asked because my heart was a siren and I needed a map. He closed his eyes. Lisbon for 3 months on a tourist stay, he said. A sublet studio near the Miradero das Portas do Sol because she likes the view and I like pretending I can pronounce things. She has contacts who said they could get me photography assisting gigs while I figure it out. I was going to leave a letter on the counter and text you when I landed because I knew if I had to watch your face I'd stay. And I told myself staying out of fear would be worse than leaving out of selfishness. I built this argument like a chair and sat in it for a long time. I wanted to throw the chair. Instead I took a breath and asked the one that matters, are you still planning to go? He hesitated and my stomach did that elevator thing again. I don't know what I'm planning anymore now that you're looking at me, he said. You in real time is like gravity. Everything I stacked feels stupid. His eyes were wet and clear like honesty trying to pass as something else. I love you, he said quietly. I also loved the version of myself who could leave and become a person who speaks slowly and takes photos and never has to update a spreadsheet. I don't know how to be both without splitting in half. I do, I said, and I surprised myself because sometimes you don't recognize your own competency until you hear it come out of your mouth. You don't. You choose. And since you chose without me, here's the part where I choose without you for a bit. I laid it out like a good intake meeting. You're going to text Isla while I sit here and tell her the project is cancelled. No metaphors. No poetry. You're going to send the sublet a cancellation request. You're going to email the airline and eat the change fee like a consequence-flavored snack. You're going to call your principal and say you need personal days next week so you can tell your wife the truth in more than one sitting. You'll move into Sam's, no arguments, has already agreed because I called him. You'll hand me your passport for safekeeping until I decide whether I want it living in the same drawer as my toothbrush. You'll put together a ledger of all the money and time you spent planning to immigrate from our marriage. And you'll find a therapist who knows the difference between adventure and avoidance. He looked at me like I had just described a landscape I owned. Okay, he said. Okay. He texted Isla. The 3 little dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again like cowardice trying to pick a font. Her reply came fast. I can't believe you're doing this to me. I took his phone and typed, I did this to her first. He blinked. Then a second bubble from Isla. I hope she knows she's terrible for you. I typed, she isn't. You are. Goodbye. I blocked her and set the phone down like it needed a nap. He handed me his passport without drama, which is how you know a person is listening. We sat there, 2 people who had built a small life out of mugs and inside jokes and friends who know where the key is hidden, and we watched what would made become a thing that could be destroyed and rebuilt. It was not noble. It was administrative. I am good at that part. The next days were a bureaucracy of grief. He moved to Sam's and the apartment breathed weirdly wider but also like it was practicing a different language at night. I slept diagonally because there is a kind of petty that feels medicinal. I ate soup because chewing felt like too many decisions. I went to work and managed other people's paperwork, and every time I stamped approved I felt like I'd done something generous for a stranger to make it up to myself. We went to therapy with a woman named Pilar who wore cardigans like armor and listened like she'd learned it in an observatory. Narrate without epilogue, she said to both of us, and I loved her immediately and also wished her a flat tire. He told her his timeline in verbs. He didn't make himself the protagonist of a story where pain is a character you fall for. He said, met, lied, rented, planned, practiced Portuguese apologies, bought a compass he didn't need. I told my timeline in nouns: showbox, boarding pass, bank search, sofas smudge, the word TBD like a bruise. Pilar asked us to name the parts of us that had signed contracts without the rest of us reading them. He said, the storemaker. I said, the archivist who thinks labeling is loving. We both winced because truth can be tacky until you sit with it a while and it dries. He wrote letters he wasn't allowed to give me, letters to the version of me in Lisbon who finds his note on the counter, to Isla who thought adventure was immoral to himself. He read them to Pilar and Pilar said, notice how often you use the future tense as an alibi. He started bringing me proof instead of promises. Receipts for cancelled plans. Screenshots of gone messages. A photo of him at Sam's cleaning the bathroom like a man who has just discovered mildew, and metaphors do not behave similarly. The thing about being an immigration paralegal is that you see what people are willing to risk to belong somewhere they chose. The thing about marriage is we stop choosing daily, and then we're surprised when the house feels like it has squatters' rights. I started choosing. I made Wednesday nights ours again, the way they had been back when we thought routine was a love language. No phones after 8. One honest thing each. You can say, I am furious, and not be asked for a footnote. He could say, I miss feeling like a person you look up at when I walk in, and I could say, then stop aiming your attention at people who have the benefit of not living with your laundry. He quit Portuguese for now. Not because Portuguese was the problem, but because he doesn't get to keep souvenirs from a plan that almost made me a footnote. I asked him to learn how to make feijoada instead, and we stood in our kitchen slowly learning what beans and patience have in common. He sold the compass back to Sophie and she gave him store credit, which I used to buy us a very ugly but honest lamp. We say ugly lamp, and then one of us laughs, and that has become code for we are not burning down the building today. Sam texted me after the second week. He cries like a large dog. I said, tell him to walk himself. Dark humor is a life jacket that doesn't ask your measurements. My mother wanted to fly in and counsel me with casseroles. I told her no, and then I made one from her recipe and felt the transcontinental hand-holding of women who keep going because rhythm beats plot. 3 weeks in, he asked if he could come home for dinners. Not to stay. To practice showing up and then leaving, which turned out to be harder than showing up and staying. He would arrive with groceries and the face of a kindly criminal, chop onions, talk about actual biology like the miracle it is, and then leave at 9 with a kiss on my forehead, the kind of person gives the ground after turbulence. My affection for the ordinary grew fierce and well-armed. Then came the airport day. This is the part where you expect drama, and it delivered, but not the kind with running. His school had a field trip to the airport's biodiversity exhibit. Don't ask me why the airport has that. Our city loves art in surprising places. He called after and said quietly, I found myself at the International Departures Board, staring at the Lisbon flight. I stood there a long time and didn't move. A security guard asked if I was lost. I said, no, I'm practicing staying. Then I went and bought a magazine about hiking and a pack of gum like a very boring hero. We laughed into the phone like people who had found a small island called Tuesday. That night we met on our balcony with tea and said our Wednesday things on a Monday because rules are useful but not sovereign. He said, I wanted to hate you for catching me. I don't. I am grateful. I am also ashamed it took being caught. I said, I wanted you to hurt in a movie way. I didn't get that and now I'm relieved. I want you to do my kind of pain, paperwork, practice, repetition. It wasn't tidy. If you want tidy, buy matching storage for your pantry and tell yourself you fixed your life. I had days where I imagined his face in every plane window. I had mornings I woke up convinced I was a prequel to some other woman's epic. Then I would brush my teeth and feed the cat and sign a form for a client whose dad needs to come here because chemo is not a thing you can do over FaceTime, and the world would remind me that my love story is one of 8 billion and still worth telling, even when it has bureaucracy. We didn't run to Lisbon for our anniversary. We drove to the ugly beach an hour away and ate sandwiches with sand in them and watched the water do lightning impressions. He took photos of my feet in the foam and did not post them anywhere. We said the names of our favorite tiles from Google Images like a language lesson and then made each other laugh with bad Portuguese. I said saudade and he said, we already have a word for that, and I rolled my eyes so hard they almost left my head. We came home with sunburns and a sense that sometimes the romance is you not leaving. Months later, Sophie waved me in from her doorway. We got a shipment of maps, she said. Old city maps, soft and frayed, the kind that make you think in sepia. Lisbon was there, corners softened by strangers' pockets. I bought it. I brought it home. We framed it and put it above the desk. It is not a threat or a promise. It is a place where we might go one day because we decided together, with passports we didn't hide, with a cat sitter who knows our Netflix password, with an itinerary that includes naps and museums and arguments we will have with sunscreen on. Some evenings we look up and practice the names because we like how our mouths feel when we shape them, Miraduro, Alfama, Biro Alto, and then we say home and it tastes even better. If you are me from that morning in the laundry room, 9 steps into a showbox that changed your posture, here's what I would roll up and slide into your pocket. Gather your facts like a person checking for exits before the movie starts, and then let yourself have feelings. You can hold both without dropping your dignity. Don't ask for an opera when what you need is a spreadsheet. Make one friend come sit in your kitchen and peel something as you talk. Refuse to be narrated at. Ask for verbs. Give consequences calendars, not thunder. Teach your life to speak in small decisions. If you leave, leave like a person going somewhere, not like a person being chased. If you stay, stay like a person choosing, not a person who forgot the door is unlocked. Tonight, this is where we are. The passport lives in the drawer again, not because I returned custody, but because it asked nicely by being honest enough to sit next to the scissors and the takeout menus. Noah is on the floor assembling a bookshelf, cursing the tiny Allen key like it is a metaphor for humility, and I am on the couch writing this with the map of a city we almost used as an alibi hanging above us like proof that you can love what you almost ruined. The cat is asleep in the showbox. Of course she is. The washing machine hums without theatrics. Tomorrow I will help a family collect the documents that mean you get to stay, and I will stamp something and smile and think about how staying is a verb that wears comfortable shoes. He looks up at me, hair in his eyes. Level, he asks, pressing the little spirit bubble like a charm. Level, I say, and it is not a promise, only a measurement. He grins and goes back to tightening what holds things together. I sip my tea and text Maya a photo of the ugly lamp. She replies, you too. Building chairs you can sit in. And I think that's it. Not a plane, not a letter on a counter, not a speech at an airport. A chair. Full legs. Weight-bearing. Unfancy in hours. And for now, for longer than that, it's enough.